Hi, my name is Kirsten Beatty. We are going to be talking about how overconsumption of potatoes can put you at risk for developing gestational diabetes. My target audience is going to be women in their early 20s, preferably before pregnancy. Like other types of diabetes, gestational diabetes affects how your cells use sugar. Gestational diabetes causes high blood sugar that can affect your pregnancy and your baby's health. Any pregnancy complication is concerning, but there is good news. Expectant women can help control their gestational diabetes by eating healthy foods, exercising regularly, and if necessary, taking medication. But today, we're going to talk about how to try to decrease your risk of developing that gestational diabetes so you don't have to worry about it. So, just because we're going to talk about lowering your potato consumption doesn't mean that you are not going to get the gestational diabetes. But it's kind of like a person developing lung cancer. Any person has that chance of developing that lung cancer, but smoking can put you at an increased risk of developing that lung cancer. There are some people who get lung cancer who never even smoke a cigarette in their life, and they still get it. So it's going to be the same for this, for the gestational diabetes. They just show that there's an increased risk of developing the gestational diabetes from the overconsumption of potatoes. So first of all, gestational diabetes can cause excessive birth weight in the baby. So the extra sugar in your blood crosses through the placenta where your baby is being stored, and the baby gets its nutrients from there, and it signals your baby's pancreas to increase their insulin levels. This causes the baby to grow too large, and in very large babies who are 9 pounds or more are more likely to become wedged in the birth canal, sustain birth injuries, or require a C-section birth. A lot of women do not want to have a C-section birth. Large babies can also cause tears to the mother. That can be very hard on your body. My mother-in-law, she had gestational diabetes, and she gave birth to a 12-pound baby girl. Back then, when she was pregnant with her, they didn't have all of the technology they have now with the ultrasounds and everything, so they didn't know that she was 12 pounds. And my mother-in-law ended up having to get 150 stitches because she did rip from having a 12-pound baby. Later on, she ended up having to go and have a vaginal reconstruction because it just wasn't very pretty from giving birth to a 12-pound baby. Also, gestational diabetes can cause preterm labor in the babies, which can be very bad for them. It can even be fatal. A baby, when it's born too early, has premature lungs, which are not developed all the way, which can cause respiratory distress in that baby. So, when we're thinking about when we're eating our breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we're having the hash browns for breakfast, we're having the potatoes for lunch, and we're having the potatoes for dinner, when we're thinking about all those that we have, just because they are different forms of potato, they are still potatoes. So the study that I researched, they took women in their early 20s, and they watched them from then all the way up until they became pregnant and throughout their pregnancy, and they kept a food log and food diaries of that. And so the women before then, they would do surveys every year, and when they did their surveys, they checked to see what their food log was, what their intake of the potatoes were, and then later on, through the whole 10-year study, they tracked through medical records when the woman became pregnant, how many of them developed the gestational diabetes. And they found that over half of them who had an over-increased consumption of potatoes ended up developing the gestational diabetes. So when we're thinking about what we're eating, instead of having those hash browns for breakfast, we can substitute spinach in that. That is a low-carb food. Then for lunch, if we substitute those french fries for maybe some zucchini or some cabbage, that would take the place of that one. So if we make these little changes and we can eliminate the potatoes and then bring in more low-carb food, that can decrease your risk for gestational diabetes. So I want you to only eat 2 servings of potatoes a week. That way, that you can still have it. You don't have to eliminate it altogether, but it does lower your consumption of the potatoes to make sure that you are not over consuming them. And in the future, that's going to be worth it for you and your baby, so you can both stay healthy and live healthy lives. Thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.